You step outside. Maybe it's early, that hour when the light is still deciding what color to be. Or maybe it's late afternoon when shadows stretch thin and the air starts to cool. And something stops you. Not a sound, not a movement. It's the absence of both. The yard is still. The trees aren't moving, the birds aren't calling. The squirrel that was on the fence 10 minutes ago is gone. The dog lifts its head, ears forward, and holds that position without a sound. Nothing is happening, and yet everything feels suspended. Most people walk past this moment. They assume the wind died down or the birds flew off, or it's just one of those quiet spells that doesn't mean anything. They go back inside. They pour another cup of coffee. The moment passes. But the moment meant something. It always does. Wildlife doesn't go quiet randomly. This is the first thing to understand, and it changes how you see every outdoor space you've ever stood in. Animals are not passive. They are not decoration. Every bird perched on a wire, every squirrel frozen mid-reach on a branch, every rabbit sitting motionless at the edge of a lawn. They are actively processing information at a speed and resolution that most people don't think to appreciate. And when they all go quiet at the same time, they are responding to the same input. Something has entered the shared space. Something that all of them, the birds, the small mammals, the insects adjusting their rhythm, have detected before you did. The silence isn't emptiness, it's consensus. Biologists who study what's called landscape-level vigilance describe a phenomenon that happens across ecosystems of all sizes, from open savannas to suburban backyards. When a predator or threat moves through a space, the animals within that zone don't all react the same way at the same time. It's not a simultaneous alarm. It's more like a wave. The animal closest to the threat detects it first. That animal goes still or silent or moves in a specific direction. The animals around it notice that behavioral shift, not the original threat, but the response to it. And they adjust too. And so, the stillness spreads. One animal to the next, in a radius outward from the source. By the time the yard feels completely quiet to you, that wave of awareness has already moved through every creature in the space. What you're experiencing, that heavy, alert stillness, is the trailing edge of a signal that started somewhere else, moved through the landscape like a ripple, and reached you last. You didn't trigger it. You arrived at the end of it, and it's still holding, because the threat hasn't moved on yet. Think about what that actually means. The birds in your yard are connected to each other, not by anything mystical, by behavior, proximity, and shared evolutionary stakes. A chickadee on your feeder can detect the reaction of a sparrow 20 feet away in the hedge. The sparrow can read the tension in the posture of a mourning dove on the ground. The dove responds to the crow that went silent on the telephone wire across the street. This is a real, functioning communication network. It operates continuously in real time across species lines, and it predates every technology human beings have ever built. Researchers studying bird alarm behavior found that many species can identify not just the presence of a predator, but its type, its distance, and in some cases, its specific trajectory, all communicated through variations in call pattern and body posture. When birds hear a specific alarm call from another species, they understand it. A tufted titmouse reacts to a Carolina wren's alarm. A white-throated sparrow reads the posture of a nuthatch. These aren't accidents. They are the result of millions of years of shared territory, shared predators, and shared survival interest. The silence you're standing in is the output of that system. Every creature in range has received the signal, processed it, and adopted the appropriate posture. Hold still. Don't call, don't move. Wait. Now here's where it gets more specific and more worth paying attention to. The type of silence tells you something. A hawk moves through, and the silence is fast and directional. The birds vanish downward, into shrubs, under feeders, pressed against anything that puts material between them and the sky. The silence is brief and localized. Within a minute or two, one bird will call. usually something in the mid-canopy, and that single call breaks the tension. Others follow. The space reopens. A cat moves through and the silence is different. Lower. More horizontal. The birds don't dive. They rise. They move up into the branches where they can watch downward. The silence holds longer because a cat doesn't pass through the way a hawk does. A cat moves slowly, stops, reposition. The animals are tracking something that isn't done yet. An owl roosts nearby, and the silence is sustained and layered. There may be mobbing behavior first, a cluster of small birds calling and diving near a single point, followed by a long, uneasy quiet as the owl settles. The rest of the day carries a kind of tension in it. Birds return to feeders more briefly. They don't stay long. They eat and return and leave again. And then there is the silence that's harder to read. The silence that doesn't resolve cleanly. The kind where nothing calls to signal all clear, where the dog stays alert, where something in the peripheral logic of the space feels like it hasn't settled. That's often a mammalian predator, something with a different movement signature. Slower, lower, less predictable. A fox, a coyote. Something that moved through the back edge of the property and is now somewhere just beyond the tree line. The animals in your yard have a spatial memory of their territory that is genuinely remarkable. A song sparrow that uses your yard regularly has a mental map that includes not just where the food is, but where cover is located, how long it takes to get from the feeder to the nearest shrub, which sightlines are exposed, and which perches offer the best view of the approach routes a predator would likely use. That sparrow knows your yard better than you do. Not in a conceptual way, in a physical, survival, critical way. It has flown the distances. It has tested the sightlines. It has made decisions about risk 1,000 times in your garden. When that sparrow freezes and orients toward a specific point, not generally alert, but specifically directed, it knows something. Its posture is information. The angle of its head, the position of its feet, whether its feathers are sleeked tight or slightly raised, all of it is readable, if you know what you're looking at. And this is the part that quietly changes things. You are part of this system too. Not as a predator, or at least not usually as an active one, but as a fixed variable in the landscape. The animals that use your space regularly have categorized you. They know your presence, your movement patterns, your smell, your general behavior. A bird that has been feeding in your yard for weeks has made a risk assessment about you specifically. This is why some birds flush when you approach and others don't. The ones that flush either haven't learned you yet or you move differently than usual. Faster, with something in your hands, from an unexpected direction. The ones that stay have a file on you. You are known. You are assessed as non-threatening within certain parameters. You are allowed. When you walk into a space and the birds stay and the squirrel keeps eating and the air doesn't change, that is not coincidence. That is recognition. The system has absorbed you as a known quantity. And when you walk into that same space and everything goes quiet, that is also information. Because sometimes the thing that disrupted the system is you. Your speed, your tension, something in your body language that reads as different than usual. Animals are extremely sensitive to the emotional state of large animals nearby, including people. A person walking quickly and tightly will cause more flush behavior than a person walking slowly and looking downward. The birds are reading you the same way they read everything else in the landscape. Once you understand this, the quiet moments in outdoor spaces change. You start to read them differently. Not anxiously, there's nothing frightening about this, but more carefully, more curiously. You notice how long the silence holds. You notice where the remaining birds are looking. You notice whether the squirrel retreated up the tree or sideways along the fence, because those two directions imply different threat positions. You become a better reader of the space. And in doing that, you are actually doing something very old. For most of human history, reading animal behavior was a survival skill. The direction a bird flushed told you something about what was moving through the brush. The sudden silence of a forest told the hunter that something had already detected him. The return of sound meant the landscape had returned to baseline. We don't need that information to survive in the same way anymore. But the capacity to read it is still there, dormant in our attention. And once you start exercising it, it doesn't stop. You begin to hear what the yard is saying. The next time you step outside and something feels suspended, that particular quality of stillness, where the world seems to be holding itself together at the edges, don't walk back inside. Stand still. Not dramatically, not for a long time. Just enough to let your own nervous system catch up to what the birds already know. Look at where the remaining birds are perched and which direction they're oriented. Notice whether any of them are calling, and if so, what kind of call, sharp and quick, or long and measured. Watch for movement at the edges of the space, where the yard meets the hedge or the fence or the tree line. You're not looking for something to be afraid of. You're looking for what the landscape is currently processing. And almost always, within 2 or 3 minutes, you'll see it. Or you'll see the aftermath of it. A flash of movement at the back of the yard. A cat sliding under the gate. A hawk lifting silently from a branch 3 houses down. And the silence will break. Gradually, unevenly, one call and then another, and then a third. And the space will return to itself. The sparrow will come back to the feeder. The squirrel will resume its argument with the edge of the roof. The dog will put its head down. And you will have watched the landscape complete a sentence that it started without you. That sentence was always being spoken. In every yard, every park, every tree-lined street, in every city. The network is always running. The signals are always moving. The animals are always reading each other, adjusting, communicating, in a frequency that doesn't require sound at all. We built our world on top of theirs, and we mostly stopped listening. But the system didn't stop. It's still there, underneath everything. In the pause before the birds return, in the direction a squirrel faces before it decides to move, in the held breath of a yard that knows something you haven't noticed yet. The stillness was never empty. It was always full of exactly what the world was paying attention to.